The News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. I'm Conan. Nolan. With us is Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning here on NBC4 Los Angeles at 8 o'clock. So, Chuck, up until now, the Biden campaign, it's clear you never interrupt an opponent who's committing suicide. And so, up until now, the Biden campaign has been certainly staying in the basement, letting Donald Trump fight the coronavirus and losing, according to the polls. But now, after the conventions, the campaign is fully engaged. We're going to have to see, or will we see, I assume, a Democratic campaign that is far more, maybe not traditional because of COVID-19, but far more aggressive than what we've seen thus far.
Oh, I think it has to be. And I think you saw, I think they, you know, it's funny, just when you started to see the Democratic hand-wringing that I've come so used to seeing over the years start to show itself on Thursday morning, what do we see? Joe Biden shows up, does a couple of TV interviews. Kamala Harris does a speech. I mean, I do think they had been lying a bit too low. You know, maybe they wanted to play a traditional role, let the Republicans, let's see what they do at their convention, don't try too hard to break through it. But I do think they need to be a bigger presence here on the trail. They're going to try to, now, they're in a bit of a box. They've made the virus such a centerpiece of the campaign that they've got to do it within protocols. The president, because no one expects him to do it, he willingly blows through protocol and he doesn't end up, quote, getting penalized for it, though one could argue maybe he is already being penalized for it by where his current numbers are. So I do think it's it's certainly trickier for the Biden campaign to campaign. They've got to, any slip up, anytime they're not following protocol, in some ways he'll get held to a higher standard.
Remember, though, that those comments by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden last week, much of them were devoted to focusing on, we support peaceful protests, but we're opposed to the looting and the rioting, something that was not mentioned during their convention. Do they see that as having traction in those suburban communities which the Trump campaign is so desperate to get back?
Look, I think this is a kind of scrambled, the politics of all of this. I think the vigilante showing up to kill two people, getting support from some conservative circles, really does scramble the politics of this. I think it's a tricky line for the Democrats to walk, but the president can't be looking like he's rooting for the violence and because of politics. So this is, I think, very sensitive times for both campaigns.
And again, on the speech on Thursday, this was a teleprompter speech. It appears very little ad-libbing. You got the impression that perhaps the president is listening to his campaign. He's underwater in the polling. He needs to start approaching this in a different manner than just the rally Trump that we've seen before. Can that last?
I don't know. I mean, you know, to me, it's always strange when you see Donald Trump read off a teleprompter because it doesn't come across authentic. He clearly, at least you could tell he practiced this a little bit. He owned it a little bit more than he has with other teleprompter speeches. But it still was a little lower energy than his rallies. It was sort of a higher energy State of the Union for him. So you know, he sets his own bar, and there's always so much expectation that he's going to bring the heat that when he doesn't, it comes across as sort of flat. And so that, in that sense, I think that it was, I don't know how successful the speech was, but I do think there's a memorable line there. I think his "we're here, they're not," which was one of the few ad-libs in the speech, summarizes the whole thing, summarizes what the Republican Party is about these days. It's not about what they're for, it's about who they're against, who they annoy, and that "we're here, they're not" comment, that's annoy the establishment, annoy the media, annoy the liberals, annoy everybody. They hate it that we're here, you love it. And that, I think, is, in some ways, was the message of the entire convention.
Right. I'm not sure. Well, you can put it on a bumper sticker, that's for sure, but I'm not sure how much that resonates with that group of voters that are still on the fence, and they're smaller and smaller. Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press. Who's on the show this week?
Mark Meadows, the Chief of Staff, Cedric Richmond, the National Co-Chair of the Biden campaign, and then we're going to delve into the sports world as we delve into Kenosha through the prism of the sports activism.
I wonder, Mark Meadows has said that only people outside the Beltway care about the Hatch Act or the using of government property for political purposes. I'm wondering if Barack Obama did the same thing that we saw Donald Trump do on Thursday, that he would have said, you know what, have at it. It's okay. My guess is he would have had a much different approach to that issue.
Yeah, I think Congressman Mark Meadows probably had something to say about that.
Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. It'll be at the top of the hour. Up next, Dan Schnurr.